Hey, First Things First listeners, before we start the show, I wanted to tell you about our brand new Fox Sports app and website, foxsports.com, reimagined for the modern sports fan. Go ahead, download the new app right now. You don't even have to pause this episode. Every day on the new app and website, you'll see the top stories in sports, plus a rich world of written content, videos, social media, and analytics to give you a 360-degree view of the most important stories of the day. Streaming live TV has never been so easy or elegant. Every Fox Sports game, including all pregame and postgame shows, as well as the televised version of this show, just a click away. For the extra invested fan, we also go deep with real-time wagering lines, trending prop bets, win probability, and key player projections. So download the new Fox Sports app or visit www.foxsports.com. Now let's start the show. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to First Things First. Jenna Wolfe, Nick Wright, Brandon Marshall, Kevin Wildes. I hope you guys at home had a great holiday. I had a very restful holiday. The NFL did not have a holiday.
There you go.
They were in full swing to give us a much-needed day after the holiday. So why don't we go ahead and start with the huge game last night, and it was a fun one to watch. In Green Bay, the frozen tundra of Lambeau Field, Packers and Titans, and special guest star Mother Nature on hand for this one. She got to see Aaron Rodgers look like MVP Aaron Rodgers last night. She was so proud, just like my mom. Rodgers with 4 touchdowns, 3 to Devontae Adams as the Packers controlled the game from the get-go. Packers win. They improved to 12-3. So, Brandon, I ask you, did last night prove how tough a playoff road through Green Bay could possibly be? You saw what Titans had to deal with last night.
Absolutely. I mean, look at last night. Look at the snow falling down. You could see guys on the Tennessee Tide frozen, and it absolutely matters. It reminds me of 2013, December 9th, 2013, playing for the Chicago Bears. I go out for warm-ups playing against the Dallas Cowboys, and there was no Dallas Cowboy on the field warming up. I think Dez Bryant came out in the tunnel, peeked out, and then ran back in. I immediately ran in the locker room and told the coaches, I told my teammates, I said, this game is over. And we went on to blow this team out. Everybody played well on the Chicago side, and Dallas couldn't wait to get back on the bus. So it absolutely matters when you look at teams like the Saints, the Rams, the Bucs. This is going to be a problem for them. Absolutely, 100%. There was tactics that we had to use to get through games like this. And I go back to that game again, December 9th, 2013. I had fur in my cleats. My wife had to take fur. She had to take it to the shoemaker and put fur in there just so I can get through the game.
I think it's a uniform violation.
Matters, Nick.
I think that's a fine. I think you just got yourself retroactively fined, Brandon. I'm not sure if the league allows that.
Probably.
Listen, if they finish off the deal and beat the Bears, because they got to finish off the deal, then they have to be the favorites in the NFC. And I want the audience to understand how rare this has been for Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers, in his career, as of today, has been the 1 seed 1 time. Aaron Rodgers, in his career, has played a total of 6 playoff games at Lambeau. So for some context there, Rodgers has been the 1 seed once and played 6 home playoff games. Patrick Mahomes has been the 1 seed twice and has played 4 home playoff games. That's not a Rodgers versus Mahomes thing. That's a how well someone has been supported in Mahomes and how poorly someone else has been supported in Aaron Rodgers. So under Matt LaFleur, this team is right now 15-2 at Lambeau, if you include the postseason. 7-1 last year, plus 1-0 in the playoffs, 7-1 this year. They have been exceptional at home, and it almost helps in my mind that those 2 losses were against mediocre or bad teams. The Eagles last year and this year the Vikings, where it just feels like, okay, kind of a look-ahead game. So if they are able, Wildes, to win next Sunday in Chicago, they will be the prohibitive favorites in the NFC. And as an added bonus take, if they win in Chicago, Rodgers will steal the MVP, which is rightfully Patrick Mahomes', but he will steal it from him if they end up finishing it off by being the 1 seed. So, yeah, if you're a Packers fan this morning, you've got to feel great. You got to feel great.
Interesting.
Yeah, well,
interesting.
There's nothing scarier than a confident team, and nothing says confidence like wearing a costume. So when Davante Adams just decides to break out a real crown on the sidelines, and other people are like, oh, is this his birthday, a birthday thing? Is it from Burger King? Is it a shot at Derrick Henry? It's like, oh, or maybe, and this is something Bill Huber pointed out at SI, he's got kind of the receiving triple crown. Not totals, but per game. He's first in all these categories. He's got 109 receptions. He's got 1,300 yards. He's got 17 TDs. So, Brandon, I know people will say, like, well, maybe the Packers offense is too focused on Davante Adams. Like, maybe you could shut him down. But even in that terrible game against the Bucs, he still had 61 yards and 6 catches. So I think they're a very scary team. They're playing with a lot of confidence. I want your take on Davante Adams. And if I can, Brandon, I want a little bit. I don't know why you just wouldn't wear another pair of socks. I don't know why your wife became a cobbler and started, like, really messing with your cleats where you could just wear a thicker pair of socks. So go ahead.
Listen, I had so many tricks. I had hoodies underneath my uniform where you couldn't see it, just so I can have an extra layer of hand protection. I had so many things. Look, there's no real take on Davante Adams. I was scratching my head last night watching this game, trying to figure out why myself and others don't have this guy as the #1 wide receiver. Look, DK Metcalf's a beast. Tyreek Hill's a beast. We don't talk about him enough. But this guy can do it all, and he has probably, the second best quarterback, maybe third best quarterback, depending on who you like, Mahomes or Russell Wilson. But I'm scratching my head, Jenna, figuring out why we don't talk about him more.
Well, you're on TV.
And he had a birthday and Christmas in the same week that could be for the crown. All right.
Speaking of Christmas,
let us pause there. We'll revisit.
Christmas came late for your buddy Nick Wright, Jenna, with this game right here. Go ahead.
Hang on 1 second. We're in the NBA. The Clippers playing without Kawhi, making history yesterday, and not the good kind of history. They were down 50 points to the Mavericks by halftime. Largest halftime deficit in NBA history. They went on to lose by 51. Worst loss in franchise history. Now, Paul George, who didn't play great, but played, took full responsibility after the game. Listen to what he had to say.
I mean, it's not that big of a deal. Yeah, we got our butts kicked today. But, you know, it's one game. I think we'll just take what we need to take away from today and go to the next one. We wasn't ready today. We wasn't prepared, not from the plan, but just from us being ready to go. And that's on me.
I guess there are multiple kinds of being ready. The actual plan, and then the other kind of being ready, which Paul George said he wasn't ready for. Nick, you agree with PG that this loss was not that big of a deal?
Jenna, a new rule for this show, just to make your life easier. You never have to ask me, do I agree with Paul George? He's on a permanent disagreement basis now. A sight unseen, quote unread. Paul George said it. I'm going to go ahead and say I think the opposite. And this falls perfectly in that category. I am not one to make too much of a regular season NBA game. But there are, Kevin Wildes, a few exceptions. And one of them is this. If the following phrase is uttered, it's a big deal. And that phrase is worst in the shot clock era, ... If you ever have that attached to you, it was a travesty. You know how I know? Here's how long the shot clock's been around. Bill Russell came into the league, shot clock already there. Bill Russell's been 100 years old my whole life. He played 0 games before the shot clock era.
Nick, stop it.
When you have the worst game in the shot clock era, the worst first half in NBA history, it's something of a deal. And for a team that, you know, certain all-pro, arguable Hall of Fame caliber, good-looking wide receivers argue on television are going to the NBA Finals. For that team to have this game, I would be extra concerned. So Kevin Wildes, I say it was a big deal that Paul George is wrong and that was an embarrassment for them.
Yeah, I would say it's noteworthy. Ty Lue, after the game, said, like, yeah, we didn't have a lot of fight and we didn't have a lot of pop. And I'm like, you think? Like, even when they were down 50, I get it. The shots aren't going in. Dallas heats up a little bit. Kawhi's gone. But you can still try. So the fact, Brandon, that it was an effort issue, like even late in the fourth quarter, Boban's catching one-handed, not jumping dunks, and the Mavericks are like crashing the boards. Like, they're up 50 at this point. So for me, Brandon, I don't know, if you wanted to bail out on your Clippers finals pick, which I think you should right now, I think it would be good for you.
No,
but I would be very shocked.
Season. What?
He's totally allowed to.
No.
He's 100%. Yeah,
no, I'm not going to do it, Jenna.
You should.
Thank you, Brandon.
Brandon,
Listen, it's a big deal because of what Nick said, and I would have chose my words differently if I was Paul George, but it's not indicative to what's to come for the rest of the season. You got to think about it. A lot of emotions running high at the beginning of the year. They're coming off of a terrible performance and an implosion in the bubble. And then you go out and on opening night, you beat the Lakers. You crush the Lakers. And then you play on Christmas Day against the Denver Nuggets and you beat them. Paul George said it. He said, we didn't come to play. I was celebrating too much. The game just caught up to me too fast. That's what he said. This is a team that didn't come to play. One team in the first half made 9 3-pointers. The other team missed 18. That's all this is. Now, Paul George, I agree with Nick, should have chose his words differently. And when you do something that's never been done in history before, it's a big deal. But you don't have Kawhi Leonard. You don't have Marcus Morris. This is a problem.
And listen, those 18 missed threes, they were just 15 missed first half threes away from only trailing by 5. So they have that to hang their hat on. And in the Clippers' defense, and I know people say that I'm mean to the Clippers. In their defense, when Paul George says we just weren't ready, it is an odd thing in this year's NBA schedule that Adam Silver has added pop games. Like you had pop quizzes back in school. It's like, hey, nope, not a day off. You got to play the Mavs. Yeah. Show up at the arena 4 o'clock. It's like, damn, I was opening more Christmas presents. Like, nope, you got a game today. So I thought it was kind of dirty pool for the NBA to have the Clippers have to play the first pop game of the year. And the Mavs obviously knew about it, having played on Christmas. So I don't know. We'll see. I don't think they'll be down by 50 again the next time they play. I don't think so, Jim.
All right, we shall see. Back to the NFL now, where Tom Brady lit it up on Saturday, prompting us to wonder, are these Bucs contenders or pretenders? Next, first things first.
What's up, First Thing First listeners? It's your boy Shay Sharp, co-host of FS1's Undisputed. I wanted to tell you about my new podcast, Club Shay Shay, where we always do something before two something. Each week, I sit down with a guest for a drink and conversation, and as host and proprietor of Club Shay Shay, I've welcomed in esteemed guests such as Snoop Dogg, Floyd Money Mayweather, LeVar Ball, Isaiah Thomas, just to mention a few. Whether I'm talking to an athlete, a musician, an actor, or a lifelong friend, Club Shay Shay is a place where people share inspiring and motivational stories about their journeys to prominence. The new episode drops every Monday on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Subscribe to Club Shay Shay now and make sure you never miss a new episode. Now, back to First Things First.
All right, moving on. Let's talk some Tom Brady. The 43-year-old Tom Brady looked at least 42 against the Lions on Saturday. 348 yards, 4 touchdowns in the first half alone. Most ever in a first half for Tom as the Bucs won big, but it came against the Lions. And Brady's Bucs only 1-5 against winning teams this year. Brandon, did this team prove they're contenders, or are we making too big of a deal about the fact that it was the Lions that they end up crushing this weekend?
Hey, for some, maybe, but for me, my position hasn't changed on this team. I've said it for, half the season now. They have real issues on the offensive side. But when you can play defense the way they play defense, they can do it all. They can get after the quarterback. They can score the ball on defense. They are phenomenal. And you have a quarterback that's won 6 Super Bowls, you are a contender. Absolutely. I've been saying it, for 3-4 weeks. Every year, I'm looking for that 2005 Pittsburgh Steelers team. Who is that team that's going to be right around 7-5 and then get hot in December, going to the playoffs, and then win the Super Bowl? I said, man, is it the Las Vegas Raiders? I thought it was, but then they imploded. And then now you look at the only people out there, and that's the Tampa Bay Bucs. I absolutely believe that the Tampa Bay Bucs can play with anybody, especially how Tom Brady threw the ball in that first half. Phenomenal outing by the Tampa Bay Bucs. I know Nick is probably going to go a whole different direction, but the truth is this team is the real deal.
Yeah, against bad teams, they're awesome. So, listen, you know the direction I'm going to go because I told you what was going to happen a month ago. I would argue nobody has been more skeptical of these Bucs and Brady at age 43 than me. And yet, despite that, 3 weeks ago, I said Tampa's about to win 4 straight to end the year and trick a lot of people into thinking they're Super Bowl contenders. They're not. The problem with the playoffs is this. By definition, you have to play playoff teams. So, we've got a sample size of a 15-game season. Let's just see how Brady and the Bucs look against playoff teams. Oh, that's right. Terrible. Non-playoff teams, best quarterback in the league. I would bet you his numbers against non-playoff teams are better than Patrick Mahomes or Aaron Rodgers. Unfortunately, again, it's a weird thing about the playoffs, Wilds. You only get to play playoff teams. So, no, annihilating the Lions and coming back big on the Falcons does not do anything other than prove what I thought we all already knew. If you can't get a pass rush, Brady can look as good as ever. Unfortunately for him, a pass rush is his version of midnight and he turns into a pumpkin. Like, it's all over for him at that point. So that is who the Bucs have been from start to finish. So no, people are making too big of a deal of it if they think they're contenders.
Yeah, at the risk of derailing your whole point that you have to play playoff teams in the playoffs, are you sure the Bucs have to? Because they're either going to play Washington, the Giants, or the Cowboys. And I don't think when we talk about playoff teams, even though they're in the playoffs, they're not necessarily a playoff team. But the bigger issue for me is this. That game felt like the Broncos-Saints game where you pulled the quarterback, out of FedEx, and but with none of the charm. They were missing 5 coaches, and Matthew Stafford went down. So I'm watching the game like, all right, Brady's got 2 touchdowns in 8 minutes. It just felt more of like a exhibition game at some point, Brandon. So for me, it was the COVID contact tracing that kind of made this game a wash. There's nothing really that the Bucs could do to impress me because the Lions felt so out of sorts.
Look, there's no excuse in football. I don't care what happens on the other side, what happens in the other team's locker room. They strap up just like we strap up, and they got their butts kicked. And, Nick, the last time this team lost was in November, and you know better than anybody else. You've been covering sports for a very long time. It's about, can you right your wrongs in December, in January? This team is doing that. And you're right. We won't know until the playoffs. But I'm telling you right now, because you're a big gambler and you like betting on sports, you better bet your bottom dollar that this team will contend. Ooh. They lost 2 games to the Saints. Okay. They lost to the Chicago Bears Thursday Night Football. Yeah. They lost to the Kansas City Chiefs by 3. They lost to the Rams by 3. But guess what? This team is going to be exactly where they need to be come playoff time. I promise you that.
Home with their families? I mean, maybe. It's been a rough year. It'd be nice to spend time with them. But, I mean, you just listed those teams as if those teams don't all have one common denominator. They're playoff teams. Like, what are we talking about?
That's right.
I just honestly, we can talk about the Bucs getting hot. We can talk about the Bucs getting hot. But if you want me to believe that, you have to present the case that if these 4 games that Falcons, Panthers, Lions, Falcons again were the first 4 games of their year, and at the end of the year they had the Saints, they had the Chiefs, they had the Bears, they still would go 4-0 going into the playoffs. They don't listen to you. But nobody's going to present that case because nobody believes it.
Let me give you an example.
Right now,
let me give you an example.
Please.
Let me give you an example. The Bucs is like my 6-year-old son. My son just turned 6 December 17th. Sometimes we go in the backyard and we shoot hoops. When he's missing shots, he starts crying. He starts pouting, "Daddy, I can't do it. Daddy, I can't do it." I say, "Son, think positive, like Russell Wilson. You remember Russell Wilson? That's your guy. Remember we were living in Seattle, Daddy's playing for the Seahawks, and I talked to you about how positive he is. Think about that and do that." And then all of a sudden he makes 1 shot. And then all of a sudden he makes 2, 3, 4, 5 in a row. That's who the Bucs are.
105.
They've been trying to figure out in October, in November, who they are. They've been missing a deep ball. They haven't been able to run the ball on offense. And then all of a sudden you play these bum teams the last 4 games of the season, then you get in a rhythm, and then all of a sudden you have confidence, you have the mojo. That is what's happening in Tampa Bay right now. They are getting mojo and they have the confidence.
Jenna, counterpoint, Brandon's 6-year-old son, also not a Super Bowl contender. That also is possible. That's also the other possibility. Is that it's possible that he's also not winning the Super Bowl this year? Maybe. I don't know.
Bucs get the win, their first playoff berth in 13 years. So it doesn't matter who they beat. Congratulations goes out to them. Now we see what happens moving forward. All right, time to talk some Fox Super 6. They've already given away $3.5 million already. All you got to do is download the free app, get your picks in before kickoff on Sunday for your chance to win some of Terry Bradshaw's well-earned money. For much more sports, stories, scores, all of it, you can always head to the Fox Sports app. Again, just predict the outcome of 6 NFL games, and you too could be a part of the big money earnings. We will take a break. Much more First Things First right after this.
Hey, First Things First listeners, it's Charlotte Wilder here to tell you about my new podcast with Mark Titus called the People's Sports Podcast. It comes out every Thursday, and Mark and I take one of the big stories of the week, and then we go off on tangents you never saw coming. This might mean that we start talking about the Dodgers winning the World Series and end up wondering if Knicks fans deserve happiness. Or begin with LeBron's greatness and end up drafting our ultimate beer league softball team made up of old athletes. Whatever it is, the only rule of the show is that it has to be fun and funny, because these days we can all use as many laughs as we can get. So check it out wherever you get your podcasts and come down weird sports rabbit holes with us. We can't wait to have you. Now, back to First Things First.
Back here, First Things First, time now for a little drawing a blank. Alvin Kamara was a Christmas Day delight, especially if you played fantasy this weekend. Scored 6 touchdowns and the Saints win over the Vikings on Friday. Also had the coolest pair of cleats in the league. But Brandon, the best performance this weekend was blank.
Mike Evans. I would have went with his partner Tom Brady, but he doesn't qualify because he only had a phenomenal game, record game, but only in a half. So I'm going to go with Mike Evans. 10 catches off of 12 targets, 181 yards, 2 tubs. Mike Evans is the right answer. This dude is a monster, and he will be one of the reasons why this team make a lot of noise in the playoffs, Nick.
Listen, I am getting sick of being the person on this show that has to show some respect to the elder statesmen of the league. You're just overlooking the quarterback of your preseason Super Bowl pick out of the AFC. I got to deal with Wilds calling him mean names like Rigatoni Roethlisberger and Bolognese Big Ben. Big Ben, down 24-7 with the season falling apart. Goes for 340, 3 touchdowns. Gets his team a de facto bye in Week 17 if they want it. They can go into the playoffs feeling great, playing the best offensive half of the year. Now, does it help they went up against Phillip Rivers, and Phillip Rivers, when he can barely see the playoffs on the horizon, is just going to start giving the ball away? Of course it helps, but you knew that was going to happen, and Big Ben took advantage. So old Rigatoni Roethlisberger shows he's got a little something left, unlike what Kevin Wild's been saying for weeks about him.
Okay, that's not true, anyone that's just tuning in. Kevin Durant, here's why. And I know he missed the game-winning shot. We just showed it against the Hornets. But we were like, Kevin Durant's back. He's playing great on offense. Kevin Durant's back. They're blowing out teams. This play, which people are saying, Terry Rozier caught a body. Terry Rozier put Durant on a poster. No, he didn't. If you want to make that poster, no one will buy it. This play is a Nets highlight. Kevin Durant going full speed to contest a shot where you know you're going to land awkwardly was the biggest sign that he has no worries about his Achilles at all. Even though Terry Rozier had a nice dunk, it wasn't a poster, but to me, Kevin Durant showing that he's back and contesting things, landing awkwardly, means the Nets are going to be a major problem. I know you think they're going to be a problem. It's going to be a major problem.
I bet you Terry Rozier would buy that poster. Raiders and Dolphins, and once again Tua struggled, and once again Fitzy came on and saved the day. But Brian Flores said, sticking with Tua for next week's big game in Buffalo. So Brandon, Brian Flores' decision to stick with Tua is blank.
Look, Jen, everybody knows I'm a Fitzmagic type of guy. Had 17, 18 different quarterbacks, and he was my favorite one to play for. So look, when you look at this setup, you know, I'm one that's like, man, what is he doing? He needs to just make the decision and ride with Fitzmagic. But then I thought more about it, and I said, you know what? This is actually groundbreaking. Brian Flores has figured something out. I don't know if it's like a 6th man of the year award, 12th man of the year award, whatever you want to call it. But it's working, and I'm not going to question it, although I am in love with Fitzmagic. So this is groundbreaking.
This is a balancing act because Brian Flores is trying to balance the long-term best scenario for the Dolphins, which is Tua turning into a franchise quarterback, and the short-term, which is making the postseason this year. So you don't want to kneecap Tua's confidence long-term, but you also want to give your team a chance, the best chance to make the postseason. So right now he has to balance both of them. And Wilds, I think we got to say, he's doing a pretty damn good job with it. And I think with respect to Brandon's favorite quarterback ever, Ryan Fitzpatrick, I think we're crazy if we act like, well, if you insert Fitzpatrick, there's no chance he throws the game away. Like, that's always on the board. And so I think Brian Flores is doing a balancing act, and I think it's a good one by him so far.
Yeah, well, maybe it's working because they're losing because Tua's in there, so Fitzmagic can come in and save the day. Like, I used to cut hockey highlights I used to edit a little bit, for Madison Square Garden. I cut hockey highlights. You know what the best goalie saves were? When the goalie was totally out of position. So he'd be way out of position, then like dive across and make a goal. I was like, oh! And I started like, oh, you're just constantly out of position, so you're getting a chance to make a great save. So I know we want to say that Flores is doing the right thing, but I think if we all took some truth serum, we're like, start Fitzmagic, you won't be in these situations.
Something to consider. On to Kansas City now. Chiefs didn't look great yesterday, but the record doesn't care. They got the W, narrowly beating the Atlanta Falcons, who missed a kick as time expired that would have sent the game to overtime. Brandon, the Chiefs just squeaking by the Falcons was blank.
Anticipate it, Jenna. Look, I picked the Falcons to cover the spread against the Chiefs. When you look at it, this Falcons team is a really good team. Their record just doesn't show it. Since that coaching change, this team has been playing much better. Now, when you look at the Chiefs, they have won 7 straight games against 6 or fewer points. They have won 7 straight games, and I'll say this again, with under 6 or fewer points. That is a big deal. This is anticipated. And Nick, I chopped that up a little bit. Fix that for me, buddy.
Listen, 7 straight wins where the margin of victory has been less than a touchdown. That's what Brandon was saying, and I understand that.
There you go.
Listen, the Chiefs squeaking by the Falcons was filler. Because everything for the Chiefs this year has been filler until they're going to go 15-1. Their quarterback may or may not win the MVP. And they are they did this in the first quarter. In the first quarter, They're running single wing pirouettes with throwing the ball to Patrick Mahomes. If you think this is a team that is taking these games seriously, I got something else to tell you. Now, they're so good they win anyway, but Wilds, they ran this play in a tie game on 4th down in the first quarter. You know why? Because they're bored, and they've been bored since the Super Bowl.
Okay. Well, you're an A.J. Terrell catch away from losing the game. I think this is going to end up biting you bad, Nick. I don't think it's going to work. And I know you say, oh, they're bored. They're trying to. What was my answer? Oh, Chris Gaines. You remember Chris Gaines? He was like Garth Brooks' alter ego. He sold 170 million albums. He's like, you know what I am? I'm a new guy. I'm Chris Gaines. I can put a wig on and I sing rock and roll now. Like, all right, that's not going to work. Just go back to what you're good at. No more Patrick Mahomes catching the ball. I know this little spin around play is like from 1912 that Andy Reid dug up from some Yale versus whoever game. Just do normal stuff and win games because you're getting very close to losing games. Very, very close to losing games.
Listen, I agree. They're clearly the worst 14-1 team in the NFL this year. I just have a quick question, Wild. Because it seems like you're kind of dancing around it. Do you think the Chiefs are in trouble come the playoffs? I just want to know. Do you think they're in trouble?
Yes, I do.
Oh!
Yes. I think here's what I think.
Bills.
Here's what
Buffalo.
There's very 11-0 Steelers vibe about them. We can go and take the tapes of what we were talking about the Steelers. Like, I know they're 11-0, but they won this one kind of funny, they won this one kind of funny, and this one was weird, and this was a missed field goal. Okay. Just saying. But someone's got to say it. I got to be the only truth teller on the show.
I think their last 7 games were awfully close. Let's shift back to the NBA.
Jenna.
The Clippers got wiped off the floor by the Mavericks on Sunday. No Kawhi in this one. It was UGLY. You ain't got no alibi. I remember that one. Trailed by 50 at the half. PG said after the game, it was no big deal. It was no big deal. It wouldn't be in our show, Paul. I'm just saying. Brandon, Paul George saying the 51-point loss was no big deal is blank.
Too much merrymaking. That's what this is. Paul George said it after the game. He talked about, look, I had a great time on Christmas, and the game just snuck up on me. So he was celebrating a little too much. So that's the answer. Too much merrymaking for Paul George and the L.A. Clippers.
Listen, it's on brand. It's on brand for the Clippers to be embarrassed in historic fashion. It's on brand for Paul George to say something ludicrous. And now I'm going to do something Kevin Wilds hates when I do, which is to go back to the previous question for just a moment. I just want the audience to know, because I heard Brandon yell the Bills. That would mean Brandon now has covered the Steelers, Titans, Colts, and Bills, all as potential AFC champions. So he's basically got the whole field, and I'm sitting here alone with just the Chiefs. So we'll see how it works out. But Brandon, throughout the year, we've gone Steelers, Colts, Titans, and now Bills. Got it.
I'm not changing. I picked the Steelers, but I'm going to be real. They're struggling right now.
That's fine.
Go ahead.
What is it, Wilds?
Move on. Go to the Clippers.
No, he's not allowed to do this. You're not allowed to do that anymore. You know what? Take your microphone off during the commercial break in 2 laps around your building, because you can't just say, "Hey, I don't even know what we're talking about anymore." You can't go back and talk about that. No,
we're talking about the Clippers.
Laps for you. Okay, now I can't talk about the Clippers. Laps for you, Joe Judge style. You're not allowed to go back and talk about the Chiefs. It's the way it goes.
All right, we'll revisit the Clippers a little later. We got to take a turn, talk some Cleveland Browns now. A depleted Cleveland Browns team got tripped up by the not-so-mighty Jets on Sunday. Was it something or nothing for Baker? First things first. Take a lap, Nick. Take 2. Back here on First Things First. Okay, Nick, it's time to have the talk. Yep, the talk about the Browns. They had a chance to solidify their playoff chances. All they had to do was beat the Jets. Nick, they had one job. Browns, without their top receivers, all on the COVID list, but Baker dropped the ball in this one, figuratively and literally. 3 fumbles, including one as the Browns were driving to try and tie it up. I don't have to blame him because he beat me to it. Take a listen.
There's no excuse. Plain and simple, I failed this team. I put 3 balls on the ground. 2 of them that, they recovered, and then the other that on the 4th down, obviously needed to just hold on to the damn ball. So, plain and simple, I have to hold on to the damn ball. I failed this team. we had exactly what we needed to win this game, and I didn't do good enough. And that's it. There's nothing. I'm proud of these guys for being able to step up. I mean, these guys didn't even think they were going to play. So for anybody to criticize them, shame on you. Put it on me for not doing my job.
Mike Vick joining us now. Mike, without any of his receivers, does Baker Mayfield deserve a pass after losing to the Jets?
You know what? This one's iffy, man. I can only imagine being out there without just your starting 4 receivers in the lineup, and that's difficult within itself. But I think ultimately it came down to Baker Mayfield having the ball in his hands, and he dropped the ball literally 3 times. I think he lost 2 fumbles, and I think they recovered 1. Regardless of the scenario, he put the team in a bad situation, and why they were in the game and they wasn't out of the game and they had a chance to win it. It came down to Baker dropping the football and, something so simple, and then this was the game that they really needed. So I think you got to point the finger at Baker. I think he's pointed at himself. He understands that, it was all on him and he could have done a better job protecting the football. That's all he had to do. It was really simple. Even with all his guys being out, he couldn't step up to the challenge and win the game. So, yeah, Baker deserves some blame for this. He deserves a majority of the blame, but ultimately, I could see the comfort level not being there with all your guys around you.
Well, listen, for first things first, viewers, which if you're watching, I guess you are, the Browns lost because they made the show, and those are the parameters for which we talk about the Browns in long form, so let me address it. It's true. I mean, the last 4 times we've talked about it's been after a loss. But let's address it. Does Baker deserve a pass? Of course not. Of course he doesn't deserve a pass. You win and you're in the playoffs, and you lost to the Jets. Nobody involved in the Browns operation deserves a pass. Kevin Stefanski doesn't deserve a pass for having a game plan where they throw the ball 53 times with practice squad receivers. The defense doesn't deserve a pass for letting Sam Darnold look like a passable NFL quarterback and forcing no turnovers against the turnover-prone Jets. The offensive line, even though they were without 2 starters, doesn't deserve a pass for not being able to protect Baker. And Baker doesn't deserve a pass for fumbling the ball multiple times, including on a sneak, which if they pick it up, they potentially could score a touchdown to force overtime. So nobody deserves a pass here. This Browns season can be a wild success with a playoff berth. But if they just win 10 games and miss the playoffs because they go 0-2 down the stretch, it obviously is not any type of wild success. They don't have to win the Super Bowl for it to be successful, but they've got to get in the tournament. And they had it in front of them against the Jets, and for a litany of reasons, they didn't get it done. So, of course, Baker deserves criticism for that. I don't care if you don't. Guess who also has practice squad receivers? The Jets. They just call them starting receivers, but they're the Jets. So, you can't lose this football game under any circumstances. And so even given the COVID stuff, Brandon, but nobody involved with the Browns deserves a pass here. Nobody.
Yeah, and I'm not giving you a pass either, Nick Wright. First things first, audience. Don't buy into Nick Wright's propaganda. We talk about the Cleveland Browns every single week. They racked up 10 wins this year, and we talked about all 10 wins. We talked about Baker Mayfield when he threw for 300 yards, 150
Brandon, what did we say about the Giants game?
Come on, please. Please, let's not buy into your propaganda. We're not going to do it.
Okay.
And to answer the question, no, he doesn't deserve to get a pass. When you need Baker Mayfield to win a game for you, he loses the game. If this game came down to, let's say interceptions because there was mishaps and there wasn't any continuity between Baker and his wide receivers and tight ends, then we can say, okay, yeah, that's an issue. But this came down to this guy holding on to the ball. That's disturbing. Once again, in critical moments, Baker Mayfield will lose it for you. And then the most disturbing thing of all is after the game. What did he do? And this is why when people say, Brandon, why do you crush Baker? And he's only done something that no quarterback has done in 20-something years. He's led this team to a playoff berth. Like, why are you so hard on Baker? Well, here's the face of my franchise. After a game, they lose, the Jets, okay? This is one bad game. What does he do? He answers one question, talks for 2 minutes, get up and leave. This is who he is, and this is why I can't trust him, and this is why he can't be the quarterback of my franchise.
Okay, first of all, Brandon's got a franchise. Didn't tell me. Should have let me know, because old KW, come on and do public relations or something. Here's the thing. We've seen this story throughout the whole year, and we saw it twice this week. When the headline is the team is missing a something, that team loses the game. Broncos like, we don't have any quarterbacks. Saints like, we don't care, we're gonna win. Okay, fine. The Lions are like, hey, by the way, we don't have any coaches. The wide receiver coach is now the head coach, and the guy who was selling popcorn is going to be the wide receivers coach, and Tom Brady blows out the Lions. So when the headline is Baker doesn't have any wide receivers, and then you read down in the story, and it's like, yeah, they warmed up in the parking garage, and then decided to throw the ball 50 times, I give Baker a pass. And Mike, here's the other reason I give him a pass. Yeah, he held on to the ball because he's got a bunch of practice squad guys out there. So if he's getting smashed while he's trying to get the ball out, it's different than the last fumble that he had, which was also recovered. So I also give him a pass there. It's just kind of the end of the game type thing. So I give Baker a total pass for this just because his guys weren't out there.
Yeah, definitely a very weird situation for Baker, and I can only imagine being in that situation, like I said. But ultimately, the ball was in his hands. They did throw it more than they ran it, and the staple of this offense is the run game. So I would have thought that they would have predominantly ran the ball more than passed it and just tried to find a way to get a win and get out of the stadium. They chose to do it the opposite. They chose to put their faith in Baker, and it didn't work out.
Hey, Brandon, let me ask you something. On Friday, you actually picked this as your upset pick. How'd you see this one coming?
Well, I'm looking at it. The Jets coming off of a big win, and they've been playing really well. They just, they could have won 2 out of their last 3 games. And look, it's one of those games where it's a trap game, right? Where the Browns have been rolling high and they've been playing really good ball. So, it's one of those things where I just leaned on my experience being in the locker room. I thought it was a trap game for the Browns. Now, I didn't expect them not to have their wide receivers, obviously. But once again, Baker Mayfield, in a critical moment, he loses the game for his team. He could have been a hero.
We got to address that.
He could have been a hero.
We got to address that.
Go ahead, please.
You're right about that. He could have been a hero.
Listen, I have obviously been pro Baker on this show. But when he is screwed up, I've said it. I just said he doesn't deserve a pass when a lot of people today are going to give him a pass because of the COVID stuff. Brandon, you have been unwilling throughout a good portion of the year to fully criticize Cam based on COVID from 3 months ago. But I can say, hey, you got to beat the Jets. You can't say in the critical moments you can't trust Baker Mayfield and ignore the fact that he has the most game-winning touchdown passes in the final minute of any quarterback all season. You can't ignore the fact that against the Ravens, you decided the game ended on his interception in the 3rd quarter and then totally disregarded the 3 touchdown drives, but it didn't end. They had the lead after that, so by definition, it didn't. So we're not going to be able to have real Baker Mayfield conversations if when they lose, you go to the hobby horse of this is why he can't be my quarterback. And when they win, you say, but it was against the Titans or it was against the Giants, like the Giants didn't have a top 10 defense going into the game.
Nick, what I'm saying,
whatever it is.
There's validity.
Like, you got to be fair.
Nick, there's validity behind what I'm saying. The games are so hard, right? We just talked about this last week.
Yeah.
And the reason why I don't trust Baker Mayfield is because the margin of victory is very thin in the National Football League. So when you have a quarterback, right, that can win a game for you, it gives you a chance times 1,000. Baker Mayfield is a quarterback that will lose a game for you. So in the critical moments, whether it's the Baltimore Ravens and the interception or if it's playing against the terrible Jets, he will find a way to lose. That's what I've been saying. So I'm not going to be wishy-washy because they win 10 games.
Why are you ignoring that?
Nick, I'm not going to be wishy-washy. I'm not ignoring it. What I'm saying to you is I want a quarterback that can win a Super Bowl for me. And Baker Mayfield is not that guy. Baker Mayfield's not a guy that can win a playoff game for me because when a game is on the line, whether it's in the third quarter or if it's in the fourth quarter, and you put the ball on the turf, back-to-back drives to close it out. That is Baker Mayfield. He hasn't shown me, Nick, that he can be that guy that can be part of the solution and not the problem.
I would like at some point a list of the guys, because it sounds like what you're saying is there's 4 quarterbacks in football. Because we don't have to do it right now, but at some point I'd like a list of the guys who you have, because you're all in on Josh Allen and the Bills. And I'm very curious if Josh Allen has proven himself to be one of those guys, despite no playoff proof
he's
whatsoever.
On his way.
So
his upside is tremendous.
Some point I just want to know what the list is.
Josh Allen's upside is tremendous. Yeah, we should have this discussion.
And don't forget Fitzy. All right, we got to take a turn. Got to pay some bills. Big Ben had himself a day yesterday in the second half. Talk some Steelers next. First things first. Back here talking Colts and Steelers with Michael Vick, and a tale of two halves for Pittsburgh. Here was me in the first half. The Steelers were awful. They're done. Down 17 after 2. They're the worst. Then here's me in the second half. This team looks awesome. I'm very dramatic when I watch football. Steelers coming all the way back to clinch the AFC North. Former Steeler Mike Vick back with us now. Mike, A, you want to watch football with me on Sunday? More importantly, B, did the comeback restore your faith in the Pittsburgh Steelers?
Jenna, I honestly have to admit it restored my faith because my faith was gone. That first half, I'm sitting there trying to wonder what was going wrong with my former team. I was distraught. I was upset. I was disappointed. The run game wasn't there. Big Ben wasn't pushing the ball down the field, and that's my guy, man. I love him to death, but he knows I'll point him out I'll point it out when it's not going right. And for them to find themselves in the second half, to put it all together, to beat a team like the Colts, it's going to do wonders for them going into the playoffs. I said yesterday they just needed some positives to take into the postseason, and I felt like yesterday, was a prime example of what they could do potentially. This team was 10-0 before everything came to an abrupt, ending in terms of, them winning. But this team has enough talent, regardless of the players that's out, regardless of who's out there on the field. They have enough talent to win and compete, against the Buffalo Bills and the Kansas City Chiefs. And I just wanted them to show that they still had something left in the tank and that they weren't tanking. So, it restored my faith. I'm happy for my old squad. And, man, they got to continue to pick it up, and they got to take this momentum into the postseason.
Mike, I grew up in a nice little brick house on 241 Mayflower Street, 15206, on the east side of town in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I bleed black and gold. The day I was drafted, I had a Pittsburgh Steelers blanket wrapped on my lap. I was actually drafted in Pittsburgh, right? So this is a big deal for me to see the Pittsburgh Steelers get back on track. I chose them to actually be my AFC team, all right, in the Super Bowl. But the reality is this. This game was more about the Colts and less about the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I'm sorry, but I have to be honest. And I'm going to get a lot of text messages, a lot of calls from my friends and family in Pittsburgh. Here's the issue. On offense, they went into 4-minute mode at the end of the second quarter. They were up 24-7, and they went into preservation mode. That's the worst thing you can do against a team that is hungry, scratching and clawing like the Pittsburgh Steelers. On the defensive side, they had so many penalties at the wrong time. holding calls, defensive pass interferences, and then they also gave up the big play. That's why they lost. They imploded. They had everything they needed to get the job done. This was more about the Colts and less about the Steelers. They have real issues in Pittsburgh, and they need to address them before playoff time happens. They only have a week to get it done.
Well, if they were going into 4-minute mode and trying to preserve the win, the best thing they could have done is put in Jacoby Brissett, because Jacoby's not going to make a lot of plays, but he's not going to make a lot of mistakes. And I'm not here to say I told you so about Phillip Rivers, but I am here to say I told you so about Phillip Rivers. Listen, man, Phillip Rivers is what he is.
I don't get it.
Great stats. You look at the end of his career and you're going to say, oh, my God, look at those numbers. And then you're going to look at the playoff resume and you're going to say, oh, my God, look at those numbers. Listen, and this, by the way, for the Colts, playoffs around the corner, Phillip Rivers is going to start giving the ball away. So for the Steelers, this is a massive win because it gives them a bye. You might say, Nick, the Chiefs locked up the 1 seed. Yeah, they did. But the Steelers now can give themselves a bye in Week 17. By the way, Vegas thinks they're going to do it. They're 7-point underdogs in Week 17. Vegas thinks they're going to rest Big Ben. I do too. You can go into the playoffs saying, we just played our best half of offensive and defensive football all year. We're going to rest everybody. And then you're going to go into the postseason and look around and say, all right, aside from Mahomes and the Chiefs, who do we got to go through? The Bills and Josh Allen, who has 0 career playoff wins. The Ravens and Lamar, who has 0 career playoff wins. The Browns and Baker, who has 0 career playoff wins. The Dolphins with the Fitzpatrick Tua combo, 0 career playoff wins. The Titans, maybe. The Titans aren't locked in yet with Ryan Tannehill with his 2 career playoff wins last season. And then the Colts, who are probably now going to miss the postseason. So if you're a Steelers fan, you got to feel like you just saved your season. You're going to finish the year now 12-4. You're going to rest everybody in Week 17, and you're going to feel good about yourselves going into the year. And if you're a Colts fan, you're saying, man, I hope Phil Rivers takes that high school job next year because you're going to miss the playoffs because you blew a 17-point lead against a team that was falling apart in the weeks leading up to it.
Okay, here's my take. This reminds me of, this happens about once a year, when a guy, and it's always a guy, falls into a zoo enclosure, like he falls in with the lions, and then he escapes, and it's like, oh, thank goodness, and it's a big celebration of escape. Like, hey, celebrate the fact that you're out, but we got some real questions of how you put yourself in this spot that deserves no celebration at all, deserves a stern look and a furrowed brow. So, Mike, those questions are this. Why are we always down? Why are we down 17 points? And the other thing, when we talk about balanced attack, why do we refuse to run the ball? They had 5 yards starting the fourth quarter. 5 yards. So the fact that they're this committed to Big Ben airing it out, willing to fall behind games, look for miracles, look for Phillip Rivers interceptions, and then just a refusal to run the game. They ended the game with 20 rushing yards. The lack of a balanced attack is very worrisome for me.
Yeah, well, I think when they look at themselves on tape and the things that they do well versus the things that they don't, it's there. It's evident. We don't run the football well, but regardless of what, you still have to continue to attempt to run the football to neutralize the defense. They just don't do it well. They don't have the personnel to do it. James Conner hasn't stepped up. He's not hitting the holes. I think, when they had a guy like Le'Veon Bell, the offensive line might not have been, the most healthiest or at his peak. But Le'Veon found a way to make things work. And if they don't have that type of back, then the rushing yards are not going to be generated. So what do? They lean on Big Ben, lean on the guy who's the magic man for the franchise, who's been that way and for a long time. And I would too. So if it takes for Big Ben to have to throw it 40 to 50 times, throughout the pro season, then so be it. You are what you are.
All right, let's move on. You guys see this yesterday in Vegas? Ryan Fitzpatrick coming on in relief of Tua did the most Fitzy thing imaginable. The no look because I nearly got my head pulled off pass to the Dolphins, get him in position to win the game. One of the most amazing finishes I've ever seen. Patrick Mahomes agreeing with me, chiming in on Twitter. I know I'm late, but the best no look pass of all time. Mike Vick, was Fitzy's no-look pass luck or skill?
Yeah, that was skill right there. You know why I say that? Because my man Ryan Fitzpatrick knew where he was going with the ball. In the post-game press conference, he called it out. He knew the coverage. He knew what the coverage was. He knew where he was going. It just so happened that he had a big white glove in his face, but he still had the wherewithal to make the throw.
Look, I saw this dude practice this over and over and over again in practice in Florham Park playing for the Jets. There were so many times where I'd be in the end zone wide open, the ball just goes over my head. I'm like, what is he doing? And I look on film, and this dude is throwing a no-look pass. And he said, this is my thing. I didn't understand it. But the answer, Jenna, is
this
neither.
Is my thing.
Right? The reason why it's neither, it's because it's Fitz magic. It's not luck or skill. This is Fitz magic. This is why Coach Brian Flores should really be considering playing this guy going into the playoffs.
It ain't no Fitz magic.
How often do you want to have this guy win games, Nick, until you're like, you know what, he's the starter? I know we're trying to balance out our future, but we're in the playoffs now. Enough with starting Tua. Let's just put Fitz magic in.
Oh my God.
What do you mean, oh my God? He's winning games. Go ahead. Why are you, oh my God?
I feel like I'm in a crazy house. I understand. I get it. And I respect Brandon's loyalty to his friend. And so I understand that on this show, we at times pretend Ryan Fitzpatrick hasn't been Ryan Fitzpatrick for 15 years. Like that, yes, he absolutely can throw for 400 yards. He also absolutely can throw 4 interceptions in a must-win game and end your season. We've seen him
only
both
quarterback in NFL history with 3 back-to-back 400-yard games.
Yes, and the reason that despite that, he's not a full-time starter is because somehow Harvard-educated Ryan Fitzpatrick, I just found out, has used valuable practice time in his career working on no-look passes. Fitzy, your look passes aren't always that great. Remove the no-look pass part of your repertoire and work on the intermediate.
I'm with you on that. I used to be like, bro, can we get the fundamentals down? I'm with you on that. I'm with you.
Oh, my God.
I got a question for you. What happens if you need a whole lot of luck to just barely beat a 4-11 team? I don't know. Ask the Chiefs.
You lock
Actually,
up the
we'll
one
ask Nick
seed.
next. First things first.
I think that's what you do.
How do you... Back here at First Things First on this Monday morning, let's talk some Chiefs now. The 4-win Falcons came dangerously close to beating this team in football, the best team in football. Kansas City's biggest win over the last 7 weeks has been by 6 points. Maybe they're bored. Maybe they're saving it for the postseason. Maybe it's Maybelline. I don't know. Chiefs hang on for the close win, lock up the 1 seed. Nick, once again, they didn't cover, but that's for another show. Mike Vick, we're going to start with you. Did your confidence in the Chiefs go up or down with their 3-point win over Atlanta yesterday?
Confidence went up. I don't think your confidence can be down on the Kansas City Chiefs, man, as long as they got 15 behind the center, Andy Reid on the sideline calling the plays. I knew this game was going to be tough yesterday. I knew the Falcons was going to compete and be competitive. They have a lot to play for over there. It's a lot at stake for a lot of players and coaches over there, so they got to give forth their best effort. But for the Kansas City Chiefs, I mean, as long as 15, is out there, I mean, sometimes he don't even need players around him, effectively to win football games. He can do it on his own. If that was him in versus Baker Mayfield yesterday with practice squad receivers, he would have found a way to pull it out. That's how good he is. So, the Kansas City Chiefs, whether they're winning by a small margin or large margin, it don't matter how you win. This is about winning in the National Football League, and that's what they put on full display. I do think they punched their ticket to the AFC Championship game yesterday just by winning, getting that number 1 seed, and this team's going to be hard to beat. So I look forward to progression, not regression for this team.
Well, listen, the small margins of victory is obviously going to hurt them in the eyes of the selection committee when they're figuring out who the playoff teams are in the... Oh, that's not how the NFL works? Oh, it's just record? And they lock that up? No, then they're fine. No, my confidence went up for this reason and this reason only. They came out of the game healthy. The Chiefs are playing right now. They're wilds. I get it. I understand the predicament that folks are in. The Chiefs have won 23 of 24 games. They've played 5 playoff teams. They're undefeated against those teams. The one team that seemed to actually have figured something out about them, the Raiders, is not going to be in the postseason. So now we have to create ways to add intrigue when there is none. The only way there's going to be intrigue about who's coming out of the AFC is if a major player for the Chiefs gets hurt. So every game that they get through clean injury-wise, my confidence raises. So wilds to me, my confidence went up because Mahomes healthy, Kelsey healthy, Tyreek Hill's healthy, no significant defenders got hurt. So yeah, I'm feeling good about that, even though it was closer than people would have liked.
Okay, Brandon, tell me I'm crazy here and back me up since you played and I never did. I mean, I played a few games. I played a few games for the Patriots, but we're not going to. Okay.
You didn't even know who was on your soccer team.
No, that's a fair point. There seems to be a difference in the way that the Chiefs were winning games where it felt like no matter what the other team did, the Chiefs were going to steamroll you. But in these last 2 weeks, if A.J. Terrell catches the ball and just holds on to it, taking it to the ground, they lose. And although it's earlier in the game, if the Saints guy doesn't just falls on the ball so it's a touchdown rather than a safety, that changes the outcome of that game. So to me, I don't think it's an outlandish statement to say, wow, you guys are winning, Chiefs are winning because of errors on the other team, unforced errors on the other team, versus just steamrolling a squad.
Well, that goes back to the Baker Mayfield conversation. This is why I don't understand why Nick Wright doesn't get it, right? Every possession, every play matters, right? Because if those guys come down with that ball, the Chiefs lose the game. Now, let me answer this question. My confidence hasn't changed and it hasn't wavered. This team is really good. And you got to think about this is the defending champions. And you're going to get everyone's best shot week in and week out across the board. Not just segment versus segment, team versus team, meaning offense versus defense, defense, offense, special teams. I'm talking about defensive coordinators are going to give Andy Reid and those guys their best shot. Why? Because that's their moment to show the NFL that I'm deserving in being the guy or the head coach, right? The linebackers, safeties are going to give Travis Kelce their best shot. Cornerback safeties is going to give their wide receivers their best shot. So no, I'm not surprised. 7 games in a row winning by 6 or fewer points. This is anticipated. We talked about that earlier. The Chiefs are going to have the flair. The Chiefs are going to be explosive come the playoff time. There's only one team in the AFC that can contend against the Chiefs, and that's the Buffalo Bills, because on the offensive side, they can move the ball the same way the Chiefs can. Number 1 is the Chiefs. Number 2 is the Buffalo Bills. And then on the defensive side, that blueprint that you talked about, Nick, from the Las Vegas Raiders, they also have it in Buffalo. They're able to play a lot of zone and get to the quarterback rushing 3, sometimes 4, and they can play one-on-one and mix it up a little bit on those critical downs like 3rd and short.
And maybe the Bills will have more luck in Kansas City than the game that was played a few weeks ago in Buffalo, where the Bills were never really in it. So I don't know. Maybe they'll be a better road team than a home team. Listen, folks, they've scored the second most points in football. They've allowed the 7th fewest points in football. The only team with a better margin of victory over the course of the year. We're talking about margin of victory. Oh, okay. So that's it. That's an important stat all of a sudden. So let's see who has the best margin of victory in the NFL. It's actually the Ravens, who the Chiefs trounced. The Chiefs are second to them by 2 points. They're 14-1, and everyone else in football at best has 3 losses. By the way, as an added bonus, they're the defending champs, and they have the unanimously considered best player in the sport. And what we have been reduced to is saying, well, they went into a game where the 1 seed was already locked up. They locked it up with 2 weeks to play, and they seemed unmotivated. So unmotivated, midway through the first quarter, they're running pirouette single wing passes to their quarterback. And we're like, oh, I really think the Chiefs were giving them your best shot. You do? Because I don't. And they ran this in the first quarter of a tie game because they are bored. Wilds, you're a huge NBA fan. You know who they are. They're the 2018 Warriors. It's like, okay, we got to go through the motions here. Except 2018 Warriors didn't finish with the best record in basketball. These guys are going to. Like, as long as they get out healthy, they're fine. Now, they might be costing Mahomes the MVP. We'll see. But as long as they're healthy, they're the overwhelming favorites.
You sound like such a great parent. All right, we're going to move on to the NBA. As long as they're healthy, that's all I care about, and I'm happy. To the NBA now, where the Clippers... it was adorable. Clippers suffered a humiliating loss yesterday. Was not adorable. So why did Paul George just blow it off as no big deal? We'll tell you next. Thank you, Michael Vick.
Great job, Vic.
Appreciate you.
I can't.
On Saturday, 2 of the Big East top playmakers facing off on Fox. Number 13, Creighton battling Providence. It is Saturday, noon Eastern on Fox and the Fox Sports app. All right, time now for stories to start your morning. It's sponsored by Ram Trucks, built to serve, and we're talking some Tom Brady. The 43-year-old looked at least 42 in his big game against the Lions on Saturday. 348 yards, 4 touchdowns in the first half alone, most ever in a first half for Tom Brady, as the Bucs won big.
What?
But it came against the Lions and Brady's Bucs. They're only 1-5 against winning teams this year. So, Brandon, I ask you this. Bucs, while they're in the playoffs now, which we know, did they prove they are contenders? Or are we making too big of a deal about crushing the Lions?
My answer remains the same. Look, I believe this team is a contender. We knew they had real issues on the offensive side. No chemistry, no continuity for so many different reasons. And if they were able to, one of the things that we talked about is if they're able to fix those issues going into the playoffs, they could be scary. Defensively, they play really good football on the defensive side on all 3 levels, at all 3 levels. This team is reminiscent of the 2005 Pittsburgh Steelers. Pittsburgh Steelers at one point in that year were 7-5. They finished off the season winning 4 games in a row, went on a roll in the playoffs, won the Super Bowl. There's always, and I truly believe it's the Tampa Bay Bucs. This team is really good, and it's going to be scary for everyone else. When you can play defense like this, and you have a 6-time winning Super Bowl quarterback, there's going to be problems for everyone else, Nick. I truly believe that.
There's going to be massive problems for all the non-playoff teams that make the playoffs, because that's who the Bucs beat. But I don't think non-playoff teams make the playoffs, because that's why they're non-playoff teams. So I don't think anyone should be worried about the Bucs. Listen, nobody on television has been more skeptical of this Bucs team than me. And what did I say 3 weeks ago? Bucs gonna win 4 straight to finish the year. How'd you know that, Nick? Well, because they're playing 4 bad teams with non-existent pass rushes. So can we just show the Bucs season? Because it's a tale of two seasons, really. Against playoff teams, they're bad and Brady's awful. Against non-playoff teams, they are the best team in the league. I bet you they have the best margin of victory. Brady's numbers are better than Mahomes is against non-playoff teams. Okay, let's dig down a little deeper. Why is that? Oh, okay. Tom Brady, when pressured or not pressured. Let's look at it. Without pressure, as good as ever. With pressure, horrifyingly bad. Now, no quarterback is great when pressured, but great quarterbacks that are still great are better than that. So I am not going to get overexcited about the order of operations here, Wilds. I've said before, I think one of the most overrated days on the sports calendar is NFL schedule release day, because you already know who every team is playing. They just tell us the order of it. And the Bucs, people are going to way overvalue, as is happening right now, because the order of operations is the softest part of their schedule was the final month. We have seen no indication that the things that caused them to go 1-5 against playoff teams are fixed. So no, I think people are making way too big of a deal about blowing out a terrible Lions team.
Yeah, so not only are the Lions terrible, and Brandon, I want to support Brady, but when you watch that game, the Lions were down 5 coaches and Matthew Stafford. So there's a point where, like, Brady was just teeing up, and it felt like a scrimmage or an exhibition. And they took him out in the second half. He had 2 touchdowns in 8 minutes. So I think it'd be disingenuous, even that I've shifted my Patriots fandom to Tom Brady fandom, to sit back and say, like, great job for Brady. Like, I don't know, maybe it's because the popcorn guy was calling the plays, the defensive sets, because everyone had to play musical chairs because 5 coaches were out. I want to give him credit, but there were so many fundamental pieces from the Lions missing. I can't really give him as much credit as I think you are.
Yeah, this is scary for the NFC, and the reason why is because sometimes you need practice. If you want to call these last 4 games practice, then so be it. But this is a team that's trying to figure out their chemistry, continuity, their identity issues. And playing against these teams, I don't care what's going on in those organizations, it's giving them the opportunity to fix that because they have the talent. They have one of the best offensive lines. They have weapons all over the field. They have 2 running backs. They have wide receivers galore. So when you can play defense and then you can fix the issues on offense, this is a scary sight. This is reminiscent of the 2005 Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yeah, I guess I look at it as reminiscent of that Steelers team only in that what their records were, not in what they have proven over the course of the year. They have the 8th worst record in all of football against playoff teams, and the 7 teams with a worse record than them against playoff teams, none of them, except for one NFC East team where everyone's alive,
you know what's interesting,
is within
Nick?
spitting distance of the postseason. What? Tell me.
You know what's interesting, Nick, is when we were talking about Green Bay earlier, you went back into their schedule and you said, oh, look at the teams that they played. And you talked about the Tampa Bay Bucs and you discounted that loss and that Tampa Bay win. So now you're looking at the Tampa Bay Bucs and you're saying, well, look at the teams they lost to. That has nothing to do with December and January. This team is trending in the right direction. But it's interesting to me that how when we talk about the Green Bay Packers and their losses, you discount that Tampa Bay loss.
Okay, I don't know when I did that, and I don't, to be totally honest, know what you're referencing. Green Bay is going to be the 1 seed if they beat Chicago. I'm not trying to get into a Packers discussion here, but that is the game. The Bucs can hang their hat.
We did it earlier in the show. We did it earlier in the show when we were talking about the MVP.
Oh,
that was mentioned earlier in the show, and I thought it was interesting.
That is the one game this year where the Bucs have played a team that is playoff caliber and they haven't lost. If they can duplicate that, then absolutely they're dangerous. The problem for them is they had multiple opportunities to duplicate that since then, and they failed to do it. They had a second run against the Saints. They lost. They played the Bears. They lost. They played the Chiefs in Tampa. They lost. So they had opportunities to show the game where Rodgers threw a pick 6 and a near second pick 6 that it wasn't a fluke. They haven't shown it to me. We'll see if they can do it in the postseason. I remain highly skeptical of it.
I get that this is the soft part of their schedule. I like, though, that if they do go undefeated, it's a nice run-up into the postseason. All right, moving on to the Browns now. They had a chance to solidify their playoff chances. All they had to do was beat the 1-win Jets. They had one job. Browns without their top receivers all on the COVID list, but Baker dropped the ball in this one. 3 fumbles, including one as the Browns were driving to try and tie it up. I don't have to blame Baker because Baker blamed Baker. Take a listen.
There's no excuse. Plain and simple, I failed this team. I put 3 balls on the ground. 2 of them that, they recovered, and then the other that on the 4th down obviously needed to just hold on to the damn ball. So plain and simple, I have to hold on to the damn ball. I failed this team. We had exactly what we needed to win this game, and I didn't do good enough. And that's it. There's nothing. I'm proud of these guys for being able to step up. I mean, these guys didn't even think they were going to play. So for anybody to criticize them, shame on you. Put it on me for not doing my job.
Hey, Brandon, did Baker deserve a pass after losing to the Jets? I know he didn't have his receivers in this one, but does he deserve a pass?
I'm glad he said it. Hell no, he doesn't deserve a pass. I can understand if this came down to some continuity issues between him and his pass catchers, but it wasn't. We're not talking about interceptions here. We're talking about this guy having 2 drives to close out the game back to back, and he put the ball on the turf. He fumbled. This is on Baker Mayfield. A lot of people always like, Brandon, why are you ripping Baker Mayfield? He just led his team to 10 victories, and no one's done this in 20-something years. The reason why is because in the most critical moments in the game, in the season, I don't believe that he will be the guy that can lead you. When you need him to win it for you, he will lose it for you. He did it against Baltimore, and he's done it he just did it again against the Jets. That's why Baker Mayfield can't be the face of my franchise. Baker Mayfield is not a winning quarterback in the National Football League.
Okay, so a few things here. So the fact of the matter is, of course he doesn't deserve a pass. If they beat the Jets, they make the playoffs, and they lost. And they lost in large part because of his turnovers. So he does not deserve a pass. And now they face a must-win game against Pittsburgh. Brandon, they've always counted. But no one has ever argued.
Well, you didn't say that against Baltimore, Nick. That's why I'm shocked. That's why I'm shocked, because you said it didn't matter.
No, Brandon, I didn't. What I said against Baltimore was that it can't be the only thing that matters. If you turn the ball over in the third quarter and then you drive your team down the field 3 times to score a touchdown, I don't think it's fair to say that the game ended when you turned the ball over, when you took a lead after turning the ball over. I also don't think it's fair to say that Baker has never shown he can be the guy in winning moments when he leads the NFL this year in game-winning touchdown passes in the final minute of games, or the final 2 minutes of games, I should say. So is he a perfect player? Of course not. Does he deserve massive blame for yesterday? Yeah, he does. Stefanski does. The defense does. You can't lose this game.
You know the most disturbing time? Nick, the most disturbing point yesterday was this. He was asked one question, and then he got up and left. That's why he can't be a face of a franchise, because when adversity hits, that's who he is. He got up and walked away. That's what Baker Mayfield did.